66 approved. The city just removed 6 of those positions because of the pandemic, so we're down to 60 approved. And because of various outages, injuries, et cetera, that the actual number of sworn officers on the force is far below 60 right now. And so you're aware that that's also unsustainable. So because of a need to look at this work through a racial justice lens, right, to figure out how that we can make our city safe for everybody, no matter what they look like. Because of our need, still for public safety services, and because of our need to reassess the way we do business in this current fiscal crisis, all those 3 forces together are pushing us towards a real reimagining. And I want to, before I want to run through a couple things with you so that we can help share. Some of you will know this. I'm looking at the faces on the screen, and I know that some of you know this, but I want to make sure that everybody on this call has a grounding in what the actual parameters are in the city of Ithaca. What's our budget constraints? Where does the money come from? How do we spend it? Because unless we have a common understanding of where we are, it's going to be impossible for a group this size to figure out where to go together. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to walk through just a quick Budget Basics 101 and a budget survey that the city completed. And then we're going to talk through a bit the answers to the questions you sent, and then talk about next steps. So first, I'm going to share my screen here. This is the most perilous moment of any meeting. This is Budget Basics. I trust that everybody can see this because my computer is telling me that you can see it, and I have to trust my computer. So the city of Ithaca's budget, by the numbers, our budget is $63 million a year, right? It's a lot of money, and here's how we spend it. Or pardon me, here's where it comes from. First, property taxes. If you live in the city, you know that the property tax rate is fairly high. 40% of our budget comes from those property taxes. Another 25% comes from sales tax. Local revenue is what we call like fines and fees. So things like parking revenue, parking fees, building permit fees. When people want to build something or add a garage to their house, they have to pay a fee. Altogether, that's how we get our $63 million. Now, that sales tax number, the 25%, is what's taken a hit this year. Because of the pandemic, we closed down businesses voluntarily. Even those businesses that have opened up aren't doing the same amount of business. So we're facing a pretty large budget hole. How do we spend that $63 million? 72% of it is on our people, right? On our staff. Between salary and benefits, about 75 cents out of every dollar that the city spends is on the people. About another 12% is debt service, and then parts, fuel, and equipment, right? The stuff that the hard things that the city owns, from the police cars to the offices to the pavement itself, makes up less than 10% of what we spend. Now, this is where we are in COVID. We're expecting a loss of up to 20% of our revenue. That would leave a $13 million gap. I can tell you that since we put this budget together, last month was better than we feared. So I don't expect we'll have a $13 million gap anymore. But the next few months are still very uncertain. If the schools don't open, students don't return, and the virus rears its head and we're forced to close our businesses again, then this dollar gap could still rise. How do we spend the money? This is what we plan to spend our money on in 2020. You might see the Department of Public Works is by far the top expense, followed by police, then fire, youth bureau planning. Oh, by the way, sorry, I see several of you taking notes, which is great. I'm going to email all of these presentations to everyone, and we're going to post all the materials that we use and create together on our website, which is cityofithaca.org/reinvent public safety. So you don't have to take notes. You can take notes, of course, if you'd like, but I'll make sure that everybody has this both in their inbox and posted online. To drill specifically into the police department, you can see that the lion's share, again, this reflects really our spending priorities citywide. Most of the money in the police department is in staffing, between the salaries and the benefits. That's more than $10 million out of about an $11 million, $12 million budget. The total IPD budget, you'll see has sort of stalled out over the last 3 years. So in 2018, we spent 12.7 million. In 2020, we were anticipating spending 12.7 million. In truth, we'll spend less than that because of the 6 positions that were unfunded by the Common Council. SWAT, which has come up several times, is funded jointly through the county and the city. The city's portion in 2020 is $57,000. That's for operations, plus $20,000 in debt service for the SWAT vehicle. Youth and community programs, we bumped out. Deb Molinoff, who's the chair of our budget committee, really drilled into this because she sensed rightly that there was much conversation about, well, how much we're spending on police and how much should we be spending on our youth? Can we divert some of it? We included parks and forestry because they maintain so many of our recreation assets, fields, Cass Park, the Youth Bureau, Stewart Park. So that's about 1.5 million there. 300,000 for the golf course. We spent 5 million on our youth programs. GIAC is part of our youth programs. GIAC is part of our programming. This number here, the 2.8 million, is funds we spend on GIAC but are not youth services. So you might know the GIAC senior program, very successful, and we have a number of programs and services for adults as well. Southside is an independent organization, independent of the city of Ithaca, but the city of Ithaca does own the building that Southside operates in, and the city makes a voluntary contribution every year, usually to the tune of about $150,000. We also have the Community Outreach Worker Program, which we funded in partnership with the Downtown Ithaca Alliance and Tompkins County. So that is one of those programs that's come up a lot and in many of your visioning statements that you sent ahead of time as something that we could use instead of policing, right, to respond to non-emergency calls. We bumped out here a few other programs that the city funds or would like to fund that could also serve as a diversionary, right, or referral programs to policing or to the judicial system. So from My Brother's Keeper to the Community Outreach Program, the Mental Health Court, which is a new initiative that was just stood up last year for folks with mental health problems and criminal offenses, trying to come up with incarceration approaches and restorative justice approaches. So if you look at the year-over-year changes, again, to know where you're headed, you've got to know where you've been. So from 2012 to 2020, the city budget increased from 50 million to about $63 million. In that time, the police department increased from 11.3 million to 12.7 million. GIAC from 1.9 million to 2.8 million. The Youth Bureau from 4.1 to 5. Right? So total, the city's budgets increased 2.7% annually. The police department 1.4%. GIAC's budget 4.8% annually. The Youth Bureau 2.4% annually, and youth services all combined about 3.2%. So I thought it would be also useful to show you the survey that we sent out. In fact, I know from seeing your names here that several of you took the survey. About 350 people responded, 328 to be exact. And we asked them where they lived, and about 75% of them lived in the city. That tracks more or less with the folks who are on this call. It's about that same percentage. Those who don't live in the city either attend school or work or spend other time in the city of Ithaca. And what we found is that folks either wanted to increase or keep the same the level of funding that they saw in the city's budget, with the exception of the police department, which right now is 20% of the city's budget, and on average, respondents wanted to see that come down to 11. They wanted the DPW to inch up, fill more potholes, and they wanted youth services to go up quite a lot, from 13% to 23%. We asked folks, how much more would they be willing to pay in property taxes to support the services, because again, knowing that the revenue lever that the city controls is the property tax lever. And not surprisingly, folks would like their taxes to not go up at all. I think that's true of all of us, more taxes, not great. But when asked if it supported services that you desire, what you see is that a majority of people, right, 74% of people, said that they would be willing to tolerate some level of property tax increase if it meant that the services they support would be enhanced. We also asked what would be your preferred method that the city used to balance its budget, especially to help its way out of the crisis that we find ourselves in. Increasing property taxes was almost 50%. Reducing the level of services that the city delivers was about 40%. Increasing user fees was recommended. And I think this is important. Increasing user fees and user fines on the next page. We'll see some of the common themes. One that people wrote in a lot is that we should find ways to make sure that our fines don't disproportionately impact low-income residents or families. The most common theme was that Cornell should increase the contribution to the city. That's a theme because it's also a fact. Cornell should increase its contribution to the city. There were also suggestions to implement sliding scale fees because they were more fair, and to allow for people to prepay or overpay property taxes, which interestingly is a thing, as well as another common theme, or I don't want to skip over that. We heard from several folks that said, reduce funding to the police department. Other ideas included raising more money, doing more fundraising. And we have been successful in this pandemic, raising quite a bit of money from the private sector. Purity Ice Cream gave an incredible $80,000 contribution to help us open the Alex Haley pool. And it's anonymous, but several anonymous donors also gave to help us restore youth services, both at GIAC and at the Youth Bureau. So at this point, I'd like to, if I could, introduce some folks that we're going to have partner with us, and that's from the Center for Policing Equity. We're going to have a couple of, not everybody from the project team could be here with us today, but this is a national institution. I don't know if folks had a chance to, in my email, click on any of the links, either the TED Talk or the website, to see the work that the Center for Policing Equity has done. But I am personally thrilled that we were able to engage them. It's going to help us with our data collection. It's going to help design a robust public input process, right? You're all going to get a chance to speak, not only with me and with the staff in the city, but you're all going to get a chance to speak with the Center for Policing Equity as they find ways that we can build and reimagine our public safety. So I believe we have both Robert and Dominique on the line with us. Dan, are you able to unmute them?
I am looking for them now. I think Dominique
I'm right here. Sure.
Yeah.
I can speak first. Hey, Dominique Johnson here, Senior Director of Community Engagement with CPE. So I want to just say thank you all for being here, and I'm really excited to get to know you all as we move through this process. One of the things I can say is that we're not here to sort of reinvent the wheel. You are experts in your community, you're experts in your lived experiences. My only goal here from the community engagement side of things is to be able to support you. So if that means you need more of something, we're the people that you're going to come to say, we need more of. We need you to do this so that we can have more agency here. We need you to elevate this. We need you to do that. That is sort of where we lie in it. And this isn't going to be the last time that you see me. We're going to have tons of conversations and set up ways for everybody to sort of participate in this process as we move forward. So I encourage you all to reach out and sort of let me know where you stand. And so if you want to have a little virtual coffee chat so we can get to know each other, I'm happy to do that. But just knowing that we're along with you in this process and there's more to come.
Thank you, Dominique. Thank you. And Robert?
I just want to say this is a great honor to work with the mayor and all of Ithaca. I'm the Director of Law Enforcement Field Engagement, Rob Kenter, right? My background's in policing. I spent 30 years with the Norfolk Police Department here in Southeast Virginia before retiring this year and joining the Center for Police and Equity. My time in the police department, I was mostly in the Field Operations Bureau, right? I'm a street cop with a PhD, basically. I spent 6 years in the chief's office, reporting directly to the chief of police here in Norfolk, advising him on evidence-based strategies and partnering with some academic institutions here locally to pull data out of our system and share that data so we can publish it and let other people know what's working and what's not working. Like I said, I have a PhD from Old Dominion University. I'm a research fellow at George Mason University here in Alexandria, Virginia. And I'm looking forward to working with everyone in Ithaca, helping the mayor, partnering with the chief of police. What we're going to do is we're going to guide them through the system to pull data out of their system. And we're going to assist them in making evidence-based decisions and strategies based on what the data says. And we don't work in symbolism. We don't work on opinion. We work off the data. And we like to say, if we can measure it, we can fix it. That's our motto here at CPE. And I just want to say thank you all for coming out. I look forward to working with you. I have great love for Ithaca.
Thank you. Thank you both for being here. And just a couple notes before I move on to the vision part. One, Michelle Johnson is here with us doing translation for sign language. So if you'd like, you can find her in the participants page and pin her so that you can enjoy the services. Second thing is, so my hope is that over the next several months that I won't have to do as much talking. I don't, I'm talked out. And I know that we all have a lot to contribute to this. What I wanted to do in this meeting, what I felt like I had to do is give us all a chance to settle in and to look at each other and to do three things. First, and these are the three asks, the three bits of homework. If you're willing to continue participating in the Community Leadership Advisory Group. And I could tell from some of your faces, you were like, I was hoping this would be one meeting and done. But no chance. And if you're not, and if so, that's okay. That's okay. If what you wanted to do is say your piece and send your three ideas and you don't want to participate in any more meetings, that's okay. But if you are willing to continue, I hope you do three more things for us, which is one, take a look around and ask yourself who's not here that it should be. People you know and people you don't know. And that might mean friends who are like-minded and you just feel like you're underrepresented in this room right now and you want to get their view put in. Or it could mean people that you know, look, I know that there are more ideas in this in the city and they're not in this room right now. So I would ask you to, to think of people that should be joining this group that haven't, and send them to cityofithaca.org/reinvent public safety. So ask them to fill out the form, to submit their reasons for joining our work so that we can have as diverse and representative a group as we can here. The second piece of homework I'd ask you to do is to put in the group chat right now, and if things come up to you later, to email reinventpublicsafety@cityofithaca.org. But to put in the chat to me or to Dan, ideas that you would like, or questions you'd like answered publicly. So the intention being that we're going to post a list of questions and answers on our website, saying these are frequently asked questions about police in Ithaca, about the budget, about our process, whatever questions you might have, put them in the chat or email them to us if you would like them answered in public. And the third thing I would ask you to do as homework, and if you're committed to engaging in this work, is to participate in a bit of research. Some of you have done this already, as we'll go through. Some of you have done deep thinking and looking at other places for answers. I would ask everybody in the group to commit to finding just one thing that you think could be helpful or useful in the city of Ithaca. It could be an example from another country or another city. It could be an example from science fiction, for all I care. I mean, I just want to make sure that we are not leaving anything on the table in a moment when we have so much engagement. I think it would be a shame if we came out of this process not having kicked the tires on every possible venue for reform and transformation. So those are the three things. And as you're thinking about those three things, I want to walk you through what we've collected so far. This is not everybody's responses. We got several more responses this afternoon. That is my fault. I did not give you a cutoff. I did not give you a deadline. And I know that how I work without a deadline. But as of like 11 a.m. this morning, Shelley pulled and I formatted all of the answers that you'd sent in to this question. If you could snap your fingers and make any three changes to the Ithaca Police Department, what three changes would you make? Now I want to run through some of these, and again, know that I'm going to post these on the website. Everybody's going to have an opportunity to look through them, and we're going to include the answers that we got this afternoon. But what you'll see on the screen does include those. So if yours aren't in, that's likely why. But we place them in several buckets here, from demilitarization to labor relations. A bunch of the responses that we got had common themes. So first on demilitarization, we saw a lot of folks with concerns, questions about, and demands around the SWAT team. I gotta stop calling it SWAT team. The T is for team. So it's like calling it ATM machine, but it's a habit. You know, this first response, I bolded just a couple of ones that were super representative, right? Reducing our reliance on IPD by prioritizing community safety, by training a skilled group of unarmed professionals to respond to nonviolent people experiencing mental health emergency, symptoms of substance use disorder, and other non-criminal calls. That one was really representative of what we saw, and a run-on sentence, which I appreciate because I only write in run-on sentences. So I wanted to bold that one as well. Getting rid of the militarization approach by physically removing anything that was repurposed from the military, such as the tank or SWAT equipment. We heard a lot of that. Having every police officer trained annually in de-escalation techniques. Right. Decriminalizing nonviolent offenses. Removal of school resource officers. We actually don't have any school resources officers in Ithaca, but that's something that came up quite a bit. And then gun policy. This is something that comes up over and over again, especially when thinking about how we respond to nonviolent calls when we don't know for sure what's going to end up being a nonviolent call and what might be a violent call, given that we have more guns than people here in America. So diversion, this was the second big bucket where we saw a lot of folks saying, look, are there alternatives we can invest in? Knowing that police recruitment is tough right now, knowing that our staffing is already down, and feeling like certain neighborhoods and certain demographics are over-policed, how do we divert and fund and invest in alternatives? So LEAD came up several times, law enforcement assisted diversion. We will have time to dig into that as this process continues. Full cooperation and working relationship between IPD and other public safety units, including the community outreach officer. Redirecting mental health related dispatch calls away from IPD. Redirecting calls related to homeless people to an alternate dispatch like Family and Children's Services. Increased partnering between IPD and existing community organizations to de-escalate responses to incidents that can be handled safely with an unarmed response. Hire social workers to work in tandem with police officers, a model here from Alexandria, Kentucky. And adding an in-house social worker. Those were common and repeated themes. And again, this was, you know, just seeing these responses, I got smarter with every email we received. And so I'm going to make sure that everybody's able to see this full list. The SWAT vehicle transformed into a healthcare for all transport throughout Ithaca. A dramatic shift from broken windows inspired methods. This is again something we heard a lot. We'll talk about broken windows policing. providing the funding, training, and skills police need to truly be public safety officers. Area police and sheriffs already work in tandem with EMTs and fire departments in responding to a wide range of situations, from disagreements between neighbors to individuals experiencing mental or emotional breakdowns, to domestic disputes, to concerned neighbors calling for a welfare check, etc. Culture change, another big bucket in which people said, look, if we're going to change our department, we've got to change the culture both in and around it. Ensure that the culture of the police department at every level of operations, enforcement, and management is a culture of diversity, inclusion, respect, and professionalism. A culture that recognizes good policing is not measured in arrests, but in connectedness and trust between the community and law enforcement, as well as within the department. Restructuring training priorities. I heard this a lot too. They wanted a real focus. We understood that, I think this is particularly from somebody who understands that many of these trainings do happen throughout the year. They just want to make sure that the priority for training is put on de-escalation and community building. Somebody wrote, and if I hadn't known that it wasn't, I would have thought it was our own Chief Nair, wrote about Robert Peel. He's the only other person I know who talks about Sir Robert Peel from 1829, the founder of the London Police Department, who created these, what are now known as Peelian principles. The second principle says, the ability of the police to perform their duties is dependent upon public approval of police actions. Policing by consent, not force, as it is known. You know, that's a really important principle and one that I know that our chief holds close to his heart. And somebody said, and it goes without saying, but we have anti-racist policies and procedures. Another bucket was in community policing. This is often expressed in a way that says, we want to know who our police officers are. We want to see them outside of the car. We want to see them outside of the uniform. We want to feel like we trust them. So have a requirement that new hires do community service with the local organization during their permanent appointment date. More officers of color and women of color at all levels. And walking neighborhood beats. Independent oversight, also another bucket that came up. A public safety review board. We do have a community police review board that does a great job. Several of the members are on the line here. I see at least 4 members, Shirley, who are on the line here. Folks who are asking for even more power to that board or another board like it. Data collection. Folks want to see credible data on police stops and improve IPD's communication with the public within appropriate limits of confidentiality. Labor relations. You might know that we are now 8 years out of contract with IPD. Several folks wanted to see us settle that contract. One person who is in the know, who's a former council person, so I won't out them. There's 2 former council people on the line right now, so it's one of them. That a modern, beautiful department, instead of that antiquated building that looks like hell and is uninviting, sparse, neglected, more modern space that the public can visit monthly in an open house and chat with the chief to break down divides. But also, cops have low morale if you put them in substandard housing and when there's no contract for so long. And then the rest were some very good and interesting ideas that didn't fall into one of the other buckets. Folks who wanted us to implement the Campaign Zero's 8 Can't Wait policies. I'm happy to report that when that campaign was launched, we'd already implemented 7 of the 8. And the following week, we implemented the 8th one. Get rid of the requirement that new hires come from the top 3 of the civil service list. You know, this one scratched a particular itch of mine, which is, you know, very few people share, but about civil service, that I really do feel like it's culturally biased, like it prevents us from hiring what would be great officers. And it prioritizes this, you know, a Scantron test, like a multiple choice test that I think has little connection to how well or poorly folks will do once they actually get on the street. So that's where we are. This is your first crack at 3 things you could do if you could snap your fingers. We did get about 10 responses in after this afternoon, that I didn't have a chance to add to that doc, so I will add it to the Word doc. I am getting a bunch of your questions, and I hope you're, anybody who's not chatting them to me, please do send them to me or email us again at reinventpublicsafety@cityofithaca.org. And remember the other 2 bits of homework that we have, which is we got ask yourself who's not in this room that really should be, and try and come up with one idea that you didn't see here before, that you would believe in, that you would want implemented in the city of Ithaca. What we'll do next time is that we likely will not meet as a full 74, we're up now to 74 people. We likely will not have 74 people in a room because it is just too difficult. I don't know if you've tried it yet, but it's too hard via Zoom to have a conversation with 74 folks. What we will do in partnership with the Center for Policing Equity is design other forms of public input that will allow us for, yes, more big meetings like this, but in the meantime, likely break us up into smaller subgroups. We want to do surveys. We want to contact people who are not on this, who not only are not on this Zoom, but are not on Zoom, period. So we want to do some manual forms of public input. And we want to do focus groups. We really feel like before we start doing the actual work, we have to have heard from everyone. So I hope you will stay engaged. I know that this was a lot of being talked at, which is not ideal under any circumstances, but I knew that our first meeting had to be all of us just getting into a room and sharing these common understandings. So my follow-ups, what I'm going to do now is send you what I just presented to you, our budget basics, the budget survey, and the answers to the questions you sent. I hope you will send me all of your questions that I can answer in a public forum by posting them on the website. And then I hope you'll stay tuned for communications that will likely come from Shelley or I, but may also come from Dominique and the Center for Police Equity. Did I forget? Oh, and if I could just summarize some of the questions that I'm getting in the chat. Very, very good additional questions about oversight, right? Investigations of police misconduct should be conducted by external, independent, and credible body, not internally. Cost-benefit analysis for money spent on emergency response for people experiencing homelessness as compared to the cost of permanent housing, right? Like if it costs to house somebody permanently in our city, $900 a month, and we spend that on 1/2 of one ambulance ride, sorry, that's me editorializing. The person didn't write this, but that's my editorializing. Then wouldn't it have been smarter to just spend that on housing? Dan's telling me to make sure I save the chat before leaving the meeting, which is good and very smart. A breakdown of how IPD actually spends their time, which is something that's very, very interesting. Oh, somebody asked why CDRC is not included in additional community programs. Thank you for asking this question. So what I should have mentioned is that in that presentation, I only listed programs that the City of Ithaca funds. You might know that Tompkins County is actually the primary funder for social services in our community. That's just the way it works in New York State generally. The counties fund social services, and then municipalities will sometimes step in and fund one program or another that they really appreciate. Us working in partnership with Tompkins County is going to be essential for this. I got a very moving and powerful email last week from somebody who said, look, if you can do all the work you want in the city, but our lives are not confined to the city. And when I drive from here to Elmira, or from here to Cortland, or from here to Owego, those traffic stops are something that worries me. I'm worried for my children, and I'm concerned, and I want to build a better public safety response throughout the community. And that community doesn't stop at our city's borders. I thought that was very powerful. County Administrator Jason Molino agreed. Jason and I have been in close contact, close communication about how we can do a joint process process that doesn't just involve all of you who have close ties to the city of Ithaca, but include other Tompkins County residents. We're going to continue that conversation, Amy and I, this Friday. There's more collaboration to come, but other community programs that are funded by Tompkins County are enormous. I mean, there's millions and millions of dollars that Tompkins County spends on alternatives to incarceration, youth services, and social service funding. And I didn't want to leave, I shouldn't have neglected to leave that out, as those should be buckets. If we are interested in funding alternatives, we should consider those buckets as well, not just the programs that only benefit city residents. Okay. A lot of talking. Apologies for that. Again, thank you for your patience. Thank you for joining us today. And I hope you will stick with us. You know, there was no easy way to do this meeting without just doing this meeting first. But this meeting is only the beginning. It's not even the beginning. It's just the beginning of the beginning. I hope that you will help us carry out a sustained, full public dialogue that will take months, but will deliver what could be a national model for safety and public service delivery throughout the country. Thank you. Stay tuned to the website, cityofithaca.org/reinvent public safety. Email us at reinventpublicsafety@cityofithaca. Thanks, everybody.